All right. Today we're talking about what's going on with a lot of churches in America. All the mainline denominations. It's been happening for probably good like a long time, but now it's like war. It's like there's a war going on, theological war, and it has shifted from liberal issues to progressive. And we could all not care about it, but we should because it's destroying historical church denominations are dying. And so, but let's start with this video just to see what we're talking about here.
So this video went viral on TikTok, and
Why did it go viral?
because people are like, "This." I think most of the people are like, "Can you believe that this is what he's saying?" You know, but
Is
I
that
think
really? Okay, go ahead. Show me this garbage.
Racial slur in the Bible and then repented of his
racism. Yes, the Jesus that you and I know, the Holy Son of God.
Did you know that there's a part of the Gospel of Mark where Jesus uses a racial slur? In Mark chapter 7, there's the account of the Syrophoenician woman, a woman who is Syrian and Greek, both of which there were strong biases against within the Jewish community. And she comes to ask Jesus to heal her daughter who's possessed by a demon. And what is Jesus' response? He says, "It's not good for me to give the children's food," meaning the children of Israel's food, "to dogs." He calls her a dog. What's amazing about this account is that the woman doesn't back down. She speaks truth to power. She confronts Jesus and says, "Well, you can think that about me, but even dogs deserve the crumbs from the table." Her boldness and bravery to speak truth to power actually changes Jesus' mind. Jesus repents of his racism and extends healing to this woman's daughter. I love this story because it's a reminder that Jesus is human. He had prejudices and bias, and when confronted with it, he was willing to do his work. And this woman was willing to stand up and speak truth.
What's wrong with you people?
Oh shit, that scared me.
I didn't see that.
R.C. Sproul, God bless his soul. R.C. Sproul is he's with the Lord now.
I remember watching that video. I know where it's from.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's when like he's talking about hell. I think the doctrine of hell,
Uh huh.
and then people are like, "Do we like? Why is there hell?" And then he's like, "Why are you like?" Basically, he was mad that people are like downplaying their own sinful nature. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, but I didn't know there. What's wrong?
Hey, thank you, John Henry. It's a African pastor that's channel, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. We'll plug
Okay,
it.
so that is an example of So when pastors prepare sermons, they're not supposed to speak their own heart. They're supposed to speak like it's cringy when pastors say like I just want to speak from my own like what I want to speak on, like what's on my heart to speak. It's like don't. The whole purpose of pastor's sermon prep is to lay down your heart and to really try to understand God's. It's a there's prayer in that process to really understand why God is, calling us to a certain standard of righteousness and why He would die to redeem it, and how the Spirit is partnering with us to accomplish it. And so it's really a journey away from denying yourself as a pastor, and then really, not just like detached, but then to really understand God, and then from there you preach. But that's an example of using something that's a pet ideology of yours and forcing the Bible to fit what you want it to say. And it's garbage. It's garbage. And what do you lose in all of that? Like, he basically said Jesus is a sinner, which he probably wouldn't have a problem with. But what does that say about, like, the whole reason for the Gospels even existing? The Gospels are no longer good news, if that's true. But they don't care about that. It's insane. I can't deal with it. And we talked, Dan, you and me, we talked about this. The view of the Bible has changed. There was the liberal view of the Bible, but now there's the progressive view of the Bible, which is different. It's not liberal. Liberalism is really trying to answer the question of the Bible's legitimacy as a historical document, and that we actually have what was written and things like that. Does it accurately portray Jesus and like that? That's the questions they were asking. It was academic questions, and a lot of skepticism about that, and trying to answer that question. And also, obviously, frowning upon the idea that any supernatural thing could happen, because they're secularists. So that was the liberal view of the Bible and the scrutiny over it. There's some people that are liberal that have a liberal view of the Bible that are kind of closer to the spectrum of evangelicalism, and they can be considered Christians even. And then the far other spectrum, which is they're not. But progressives, that's not what they're doing, bro. That progressive Christians view the Bible as the tool for their ideas. So on the like the light side, like like the not as horrible side, they view the Bible as a tool for them to fit whatever they wanted to say for their social justice, religion.
Because it's probably like the culture
Yeah.
influencing that right now. Because that's kind of how they use it as the what was the word that they use this word, I forget what it was called. It was like emerging church.
Yeah.
That's like this is the reformation that God is doing in order to reform and enlighten and use the culture. 'Cause I've seen a lot of Methodists do that. Because the quadrilateral, they use the experience.
Don't say that. Don't bring up Wesley stuff here.
But that's how they're
In this conversation.
they're validating it with experience of the modern culture to help.
Yeah.
So this is what
but then what I appreciate, I don't agree with, and I think that it's false. But at least, some progressive Christians that actually honestly say the Bible and what it teaches is the source of all evil and racism and imperialism and colonialism in the world. At least they're more honest. And that is incorrect. And it is to me, it's heretical. But at least they just view, that's the most extreme version of progressive Christianity, is that the Bible is the source of all evil on the planet. That's where sin comes from. Injustice comes from the Bible, and anything built by biblical principles is the reason why injustice even exists. So upon biblical Christianity is built, Western society is responsible for colonialism and imperialistic thinking, and therefore all oppression on the planet is because of white European oppression that has its ideas rooted in Christianity and rooted deeper into the Bible itself. That's the most extreme version of progressive Christianity. And obviously that is insane. It's an insane view. It really is. Just take a couple minutes to dismantle it. But then there's also, like, on the lighter side, like, it's not that they won't say that, but they'll teach things like this, and it's like, it's you don't. My issue is, don't say you're Christian then, like, just call it something else. You're a new religion or whatever. I don't have an issue, but it's like they're saying that they're Christians, but they don't believe in the Bible. They don't believe, like, the Bible is sacred enough to respect it. Like, and you could teach whatever you want. Just use the Bible and, like, piecemeal it to say what you want it to say. It's like, it's crazy.
That's the new trend. What is it? Christian atheism.
Yeah.
Do you ever read Tillich? He's kind of the bigger proponent of that.
No, I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah. He came out of, I think, Union.
Theological?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of my professors like him.
That doesn't say anything.
I know, but I'm just like saying that that's the guy that they're gleaning a lot of this new.
Yeah,
Christian
well, this is apostasy. It really is. And people think that these words are so, like, we shouldn't say these words. That people even giggle at the word apostasy or heresy and things like that. And it's like, we shouldn't. The Bible doesn't. And so we need to take it very seriously. There's a great falling away of the church, and Christians need to know about this. And our church, I don't want to introduce them to drama, but like they need to know that just because for a long time, I never said anything bad about the denomination I was part of, the United Methodist Church. And I try not to say things that are bad. And people visited these like other churches, and they're like, "What's going on with this church?" I kind of like it, and I was very concerned because I was like, Hollywood UMC. I'm like, that's not a Christian church, and they were shocked by that. They're like, why do you say that? And I'm like, because they're not. Like this has been happening for a long time, but there's pastors, ordained ministers that are not Bible believing Christians. And people like are shocked. They're like, "How could you not believe in the Bible and be a pastor?" It's like, there's a lot of those.
That's actually very true.
Yeah, they don't believe.
Yeah, that was my seminary experience. I think it was like maybe like 20%.
You went to a very, but most of the major seminaries that are prestigious are like that, and a lot of people don't know that. The air of legitimacy is just air, and this has been an issue because, the scope of the problem for people that don't know the problem is there are millions and millions of Christians in America. They grew up in what we call mainline denominations, and mainline denominations are classical Protestant churches, and evangelical churches, and the United Methodists, the Presbyterians, American Baptists, even the Episcopalians. All these denominations are mainline denominations, meaning like they were considered the standard, right? And the biggest denominations in America. The UMC being the largest mainline denomination in America.
Oh, I think it's Southern Baptist right now.
Southern Baptist is not considered mainline.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah. But they are Southern Baptist is the biggest denomination in America.
Oh, but UMC is the
But
biggest
they're not,
denomination.
but they're not considered mainline. They're the biggest Protestant denomination. So, like, UMC is the biggest mainline denomination in America. So, there has been a battle brewing inside all these denominations for a really long time. It's like, I don't know, since like 1930s and 40s. And it started with liberalism, and then liberation theology was basically Marxism wrapped in Christianity, and then there's a lot of other movements that came along, but they were it was like quietly came in, and it just kind of like it was like a cancer, and it just killed slowly. And so, by the way, like Harvard, Divinity, Yale, all these people, all these Ivy League schools, in the beginning, they were theological centers. And Jonathan Edwards started Princeton, right? And so, like, these were revivalists that started these schools. So, they originally started as, Holy Spirit movements and a lot of these schools. And over time, what happened to these schools? They no longer teach the Bible as the Word of God. They no longer teach how to minister in the power of the Spirit. They no longer teach how to minister, with fire and with the power of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ. All of that goes away because curriculum standards. So what happened was schools started receiving donations from donors, and these donors are very, very shady people. But the donors, their incentive was to delegitimize the church. They wanted to take away the political voice of America, church in America, because they knew that if they wanted to have power over America, they needed to take over the pulpits. So these guys are political people, and they purely were thinking like, we want to consolidate power for ourselves. And one of the major problems with America was the pulpit of America influenced the masses. So they thought, how do we get in there and consolidate that. And what they decided to do was get into the seminaries. Do you know this?
No.
Okay, so
Is this about like federal funding?
once they got in, the way they got into the schools was, you have to, right? We're gonna donate millions of dollars to improve your campus. And so one of the universities, they get all this money, and then they have a curriculum standard. But you have to teach these things because we have a high academic standard. And our high academic standard requires that you make sure that you teach these things alongside, whatever your courses are. So in the beginning, it was benign. It was like one class based on, critical, criticizing, biblical documents or whatever, liberal issues, and like inserted in there. So a lot of these schools that were evangelical and fiery and like revivalist, like they started like introducing these courses because they wanted the money. And it wasn't like, you need to teach that Jesus is not God. Like, it wasn't like that. It was just like little things. But every year they would introduce more things to the curriculum standard to hold par with academic, thinkers around the world. And so another school down the street then is like, okay, we need that money too. So they got money. In order to get money, they have to hold to the standard that they were setting. And so that started happening in all these seminaries across the country. They received funding, and they found their way into the pulpit through the training of pastors. And eventually, what happens is all the seminaries start teaching the same damn thing. Like Harvard, Divinity, Yale, like they're all teaching the same things. And so now you have wokeism, like it's evolved from liberalism to even like progressivism, which is no longer, by the way, when I'm saying progressive, people might think like progressive, the word progressive as meaning what it meant in 1920 something. I'm talking about progressive as it means today. And so it means, neo-Marxist way of thinking, identitarian, power is evil inherently, and those that don't have power are innocent inherently. Like that. That's in a nutshell, right? So like, that's what happened, bro. And then these pastors start coming out, and eventually some of the pastors that come out of the seminaries, they don't even believe in Jesus. They don't even believe in Christ. And some pastors that are evangelicals go to seminary training as a rite of passage, right? And they're like, it's cemetery, but I made it through and I'm smart now. And it's like, no, like you wasted 3 years, So that's when the church responded with their own new seminaries started popping up, like Biola, and like other seminaries and schools started like coming in response to that. But they still had to talk about that stuff, which I think is a damned waste of time. That's just my opinion. It's a waste of time. Like we need to know it to defend ourselves or whatever. It's like, why defend ourselves? Let's just preach under the fire of God. Like, people don't care. People that we're trying to reach don't care about who wrote. If the Gospel of Thomas is a Gnostic gospel or a like pseudonym, they don't care. Like, they don't know, right? So if they encounter God in the gospel, they're gonna give their life. Like, but we play with this stuff. And so they got the seminaries, and then the pastors became neutered in the pulpit, and some of them weren't even Christians after a while, after they slow cooked these schools for so long. And the mainline denominations started having pastors that might not even be believers in Jesus Christ, and they're teaching and preaching, right? But they were more like docile, like. But what's happened now is, and pastors need to realize this, progressivism is not a passive thing. It's very active, right? So progressive Christianity has taken the place of liberal Christianity and activated them to be militant and aggressive towards anyone that disagrees. And they put up in front like undeniably evil things that no one can argue with, and then they import in their ideology through that. So like, the Asian American progressive movement right now is like, you trot out like the grandma getting beaten. Who can argue against that? Who can say against that? And we believe that this is the way to view this, and this is the way to solve it. And if you ask the question, but wait a minute, is that the right way to view that? And is it the right way to solve that? And like, you don't care about the grandma. It's like, that's where it goes. And like, with all of it. And I warned so many people, like, hey, if you are liberal with progressives, they will eat you alive eventually. And of course, nobody listens to me. And now, it's going on. Like, denominations are basically committing apostasy wholesale. Like, Episcopalians are completely apostate. They are not Christian. They're not Christians anymore. Presbyterian, I forget which one. PCUSA?
PCUSA.
Completely apostate.
PCA is getting kind of.
But people are not navigating the progressive movement well. I don't think Christians are equipped to know what to do with this, because we all believe in justice. But this form of justice is not just not biblical. It's evil. And I think people have a hard time when they hear that. They're like, what? No way. And so they can't like think through it. But share with everyone what's going on with the UMC right now.
Oh.
Let's talk about what happened last few years, and what, most churches went apostate wholesale. UMC was going in a different direction.
You're talking about the split, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the United Methodist Church right now, we're splitting over the ordination and inclusion of same-sex attracted individuals, or just the LGBTQ in general, ordaining queer clergy, those issues, and that became.
That's just the tip of the iceberg, though. Yeah.
But so this was basically the reason why they wanted to split, was that the UMC, I guess, a couple of pastors decided to go against the Book of Discipline, which is basically the law, or like the rule book of the United Methodist Church, and ordain and do like same-sex marriages. And I guess that violated some stuff, but they never got punished by the church for it. So I think the church is saying, what are we doing now? And they did like a vote where the global church voted. So Africa, Asia, just all the churches in general came to vote, and they decided that they were going to keep, I think, the traditional understanding of it. So if it wasn't for, I guess, because Africa's very conservative, Asia is also very conservative. And I guess the American branch of the Methodist Church decided that they're just going to find a way to amicably split.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like decided that property was going to be given to everybody. Like, just pay 30% of it and you can keep it and go. I think that was what was agreed on the general conference. But I think right when they were about to have the special conference for it, COVID happened. It got delayed. And now I think the two more progressive denominations, which might be the CalPAC, California Pacific Annual Conference, the New England Conference, I think the New York, I forget which one it was, but a bunch of other conferences are trying to split off from the stuff and seize it. But so pretty much we thought it would be resolved in that way, peacefully, but it's not.
I told you guys it wouldn't. I told you guys, because I'm amazing. I'm just kidding. But I do want to say a couple things about that. Because it's not about the LGBTQ community at all. And I think that the reason why drama is happening right now is because the church should have separated ways a long time ago on issues like the Bible. Like, this is the stuff that they should have fought on, and died on that hill. But they didn't. They saw, let's just be friends.
I think nobody wanted to deal with it.
Yeah. It's like, no, but you need to, because like that's not a secondary issue. That's a primary issue. And like, they didn't fight the battle on that hill. That's the battle that needed to be fought. And the thing is, like, people are saying things like, guys, this is so important. Like, you shouldn't cause division. You shouldn't cause people. I've been accused of that. And it's like, I shouldn't cause division for the wrong reasons. The Bible says to not cause divisions for vanity's sake, or for clout, or like because you're competitive and jealous. And but as far as like, you know, false doctrine goes, you have to divide. Like you gotta divide on that. Like if one party wants to teach false doctrine, then you gotta divide, and it's not secondary; it's primary doctrine, and it's like the Bible is the Word of God, not fudging around what that means. And so that should have been the hill that they died on and fought, and they didn't. And the other issue is that once you do that, like, you know, the other thing is you can't make peace with people that are trying to destroy you, and they believe that it's and their moral right. Like they believe that they're justified morally to do it. So that's wrong. Like you can't. It's called, you can't invite somebody over acting friendly, but then their mission and their way of life is to destroy your way of life. It doesn't matter how much they feel they have the moral high ground. It's wrong to do that. And so, and even in your personal life, don't have people in your life that constantly is betraying you and harming you willfully, and then pretending like they didn't really mean it. Like, oh, I need to create distance with this person. I need to basically divide with this person because I don't know what's going on, but I can't be around this person anymore. Dust your sandals and separate. There's biblical grounds for this, but in the denomination, we're constantly being told like, oh, we need to all get along and be friends. I was like, I pray for my enemies. I don't share my house with them. And so I never felt right about it. I was like, how could light have fellowship with darkness? This is like, they are not something that, if they were just liberal, then it's like they do their thing, I do my thing, and they leave me alone, I leave them alone. I'm gonna do my thing, and we have our own space. But progressives are not like that. It's not you do your thing, I do my thing. It's I do my thing, and their mission is to destroy my thing. And that's the DNA of these people. And a lot of liberals have turned progressive. And that is what we're seeing right now. That vote was supposed to happen last year. Under COVID, it didn't happen. So legally, there's nothing to go on. But now share with the church what's happening, the progressive racism that's happening now. We got to use their words against them, man. It's, if you are liberal with progressives, they will reverse patriarchy.
Wait. What do you mean?
See, I just ruined you.
I was trying to. I guess, in terms of them like taking stuff, or.
Yeah, this is basically what they describe as the patriarchy. They're doing it to the Koreans.
Oh, okay. So this is like a real encounter that I remember experiencing personally. Back in, so I guess we got to do some kind of explanation background. So the UMC has different conferences for global areas, right? So California, Pacific, Northern, whatever. Seattle,
Yeah, it's
Texas,
they group them together based on region.
Yeah, and then what happens is if there is a new church plant, the property and the deed of everything that is like land and property wise belongs to the annual conference.
Which
means that the church does not own it.
Yeah, the people in the church do not own the property.
Yeah,
no.
They give all the offering, but they don't actually have ownership of the property. So this is for, I guess, I know in certain areas it helps the annual conference because they do help with paying certain things. They take care
Yeah,
of
and
pastors.
the UMC is such a huge entity in America. They have their own unions, like bank unions and stuff.
Yeah, and they provide a lot of help for pastors. It was supposed to be a system that comes and really supports the ministry. But what's recently been happening is, and I remember seeing this in the Hawaii district, there was this pastor who I guess didn't want to follow with the denomination at the time, and they're renting a property. It's not even actually a physical place. They're renting a place, and then I guess he decided to take his congregants, and the congregants voted to leave. So they all decided to leave. We're just gonna plant our own church and then use that space. What happens is, I guess the rental agreement was also under the ownership of the CalPAC conference, and when they tried to go back to their place of worship, they chained it up, big chains, and they had a police officer there saying anybody that enters into this rental property will be arrested for trespassing. And that is the annual conference that's doing this.
Yeah.
And you've been in those meetings.
No, I've been in these meetings.
where
They
they
shut
vote
down a
to-
church that was
Yeah.
growing because it was evangelical. There was no reason given for us to shut this church down. The CalPAC conference shut the church down, and with no explanation given to the voters of the moral or ethical reasons why they were shutting down this church. The issue was the pastor that this church had hired was not ordained by the United Methodist Church, but is willing to take the steps to, be it. But he needed to, the church was asking that if he could be a local hire to continue to lead the congregation because it was growing and people were coming and things like that. They killed it. They voted to kill the church. And when I saw that, I was like, but what's the reason other than, is there a moral reason? Is there an ethical reason? A financial reason? Is there something going on that we have to judge here? Nobody could give an explanation. They said we need to trust the committee and the process. And they shut this church down. And I saw that, and I was like, and everyone's telling me just trust it. And I was like, dude, I'm not like that, dude. You gotta give me a reason to trust. And what we just did was wrong, unless we know something different. And so there's been things like that where I watched it and people were just like, yeah, whatever, this is the way it is. And I'm like, I'm not like this. I don't like to just sit around and just be okay with stuff. And so, the denomination has, especially California Pacific Annual Conference has problems, bro. And they have power tripping problems alongside their, what they're, progressives are supposed to be, see power as evil, but they love it so much. They love having it. And so that's the context right now. But the denomination owns every building. So when a church does a financial project to raise money for a property and then they pay the mortgage and etc., at the end of the day, the denomination owns that property. The church does not. The congregants do not. But there is a sense of like honor code where, the church people were being blessed. Like, we're not going to mess with you guys because, we love you. And like there was this kind of honor code. But with this split happening, people thought that it wouldn't get to this. But I knew it would. I warned people just even a few months ago. And so share the rest of it. What's going on now?
So pretty much UMC pastors have this thing called the itinerant system where they send out pastors. So if you've ever been part of a United Methodist Church, you'll always have a new pastor within every 3 or 5 years. They switch it out. But we know that for especially evangelical churches or Korean churches, they get really attached to their pastors. And if there's spiritual growth, it's going to grow. But I guess when you see a church that's growing and they're not really aligning with your beliefs, they can just kind of quickly switch the pastor out. And when that happens, usually most Korean churches lose 30% of their members.
Yeah.
Like, it's just they just leave because and they don't want to join a UMC church because why does the pastor change all the time? So they get frustrated with that. And so what's happening is when you do that, you can send whoever you want to this church. So the committee with the bishop and the leadership there is supposed to send somebody that will do a really good job, and the final say is on the bishop. But the bishop, if for some reason wants to send a white person who doesn't speak Korean to a Korean church,
He can if he wanted.
He can if he wants, and that person is protected because these appointments are guaranteed when you become ordained. I don't know if they're guaranteeing full-time now, but they are guaranteeing an appointment. So these are all jobs that are, safe their salary. If the church can't pay it, the annual conference will pay it. But essentially what happens is if you put somebody there and the church ends up dying and there's no use for it, they can sell the property. They can seize it and sell the property, which I've seen people vote on at these annual conferences. Because you've been to Redlands, right? Like,
I hate that place.
the food sucks there too. But
I don't care about the food, man. I hated what happened there.
yeah, it was really weird. I remember being part of it, and like churches are growing their process of please don't close our church down, and they just close it down, and they seize the property and they sell it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you get millions of dollars off the property.
Yeah.
And
so that's
and
what's
the
happening.
problem is that like they promised they wanted to give me that sweet cheddar too. You know, when we're starting church at VK, people are like, "There's funding available for church startups, and funding available." I'm of the philosophy is if as a pastor you cannot get a church to stand within 5 years without help, right? Right. First without help, then if you want help later after you've created a foundation, I'm okay with that. But like, if you can't get it to go within 5 years, like, it's over. Like, don't waste money. And but they're trying to give me that sweet cheddar. You know, United Methodist Church pastor that does is a guaranteed appointment, regardless of whether they could pastor effectively or not. It's based on a seminary degree.
Mm-hmm.
You get a degree from a seminary that has been, slowly boiled to be completely the opposite of anything that you need to pastor a church.
Yeah, you make fun of my degree because.
Of course I'm making fun of your degree. I'm not making fun of it, but that's what it is.
I know you're making fun.
It's like you have to pay thousands of dollars to get a degree that's going to put you in debt. Usually, you were lucky.
Yeah.
That's going to put you in debt. And it doesn't teach you to do the thing that you're getting the degree for. It actually teaches you to fail. Make sure that you fail. And everyone that comes out with that degree and doesn't have other training, they're going to fail. But they get almost sometimes, up to $80,000 a year. If the church can't afford it, the denomination will give them money. And they basically, where do they get that money? Well, they get it from the churches that are doing okay, that are doing well.
Oh, apportionments.
Apportionments. They also get it from sale.
Apportionment is like a church tax, by the way.
Yeah, real
It's
estate.
franchise fee.
Real estate.
So. Yeah.
Is the UMC a McDonald's or something?
Yeah.
Are we really just a real estate company masquerading as a church? McDonald's makes, basically they're a real estate company.
So that's what's happening.
It's frustrating.
I remember hearing about a church. So this has happened to churches not even in the UMC. I think when PCA and PCUSA decided to split too, there was like a mega church with I think like 2,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
and the pastor just let go of the property, their mega $1 million property, took all the churches, left, met at a park, and they rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
So I applaud that guy because that's a gangster move.
Mm-hmm.
But they can do that, and
So
it's not out of like it's gonna happen. This has been done before, and it will happen, and it will come in the name of trying to teach the right theology and one church
shut up.
model.
Not you, but these
Yeah, I
people.
know.
Like no, this is personal now.
Yeah.
Tell them what's going on.
I don't know if we should reveal that though.
Why not? The whole VK church knows it already.
Yeah, but like
Our church. Who's gonna listen to this with our church?
that's true. So pretty much, I'm working at VKUMC as a youth pastor.
I worked there
currently.
for over 12 years.
Yes, we have personal connections with this, and there's a lovely pastor.
Even though they
there.
always hate my guts, it's okay. I still love them.
There's a reverend there, Reverend Lou. He's been doing a good job with the VK, the KM side, and he's been leading it faithfully, and people love him there. And I think apparently the accusation was that the bishop said,
And it's not just him.
yeah, there's 2 other pastors involved.
And they're all good men. One of them is Pastor Kim, Nagin Kim. He's the one that, believed in me when I was nobody. And, I would see him as like, a huge figure in my life. Um, and then there's another one in San Diego.
San Diego. So essentially, what's happening is, apparently, the bishop is saying that these Korean churches are not in line with the UMC, with their one church plan. So that's why, to remove the negative influences, because apparently the accusation is that these pastors were trying to get other churches to leave the UMC, to split and join the different denomination, taking the properties with them. So that's my just speculation of it. So I think the official statement was that because, we need to move as a church, you guys need to do what he says. What our bishop is Grand Hagia. And pretty much decides to remove 3 pastors that are doing well at their jobs. Churches are growing, and especially.
And the thing
in a
is,
pandemic
usually
year.
when you move a pastor, you need it's usually three voices. One is elders and leaders in the church will get together and check a box that says we want our pastor to stay, we are open to whatever happens, or we want our pastor to leave. They could check a box. And then the pastor gets to check a box. I want to get out of here. I want to stay. I don't care what happens. And then the bishop takes all of those into account, and then he, with the district superintendent, will decide whether to move a pastor or not. This has now happened without any of their voices. He's going and doing this without any consultation. And it's a power move because they don't align with it's like progressive racism, basically. And you guys don't align with our progressive ideas, so we're going to remove you from your congregations. And the next tell will be who they bring there. And right now, I'm accusing them of wanting to go after these properties, because all of those properties are $1 million properties. The San Diego property, the Los Feliz, is that Chunimigura? Or the one in Nagin Muksanim is at, and VK are all very expensive real estate. And like, here's possible outcomes. One is they bring in pastors that churches don't want. The congregation dies, can't afford the mortgage. Well, what is the denomination going to do? Well, they'll sell the property. What's the other option that can happen? The church rebels and decides to leave. No one's paying the mortgage. They sell the property, and they profit off of that. Like those are the outcomes. Now it could be that they bring in amazing pastors, and to replace these men, and the church grows, and
it was the best thing ever.
It's the best thing ever to have ever happened.
It was God's plan this whole time.
It's God's plan. I was stupid. Hageo was, this whole time, interested in the revival of the Korean church, which is not true, unfortunately. Like, and this is the kind of thing that progressivism does, is that they will use you as a Asian token when needed, and then when you don't fall into line, they will crush you with their power. And that's racism, right? Just because they do Japanese, like, it's white progressive racism. And and it's pretty amazing that they feel justified, but that's what they're basically doing. These are minority communities, and they're basically oppressing because of disagreement and ideology. And so this is what's going on right now. Now, my issue with the two right now is this. My issue now is our church, Eden Tree people, like, what does this have to do with us? It's because you guys have amazing pastor like me, where I prepared for this, and we faced it early on so that we don't get to this place. Now, but this is happening everywhere, dudes. Like, it's happening everywhere. So even not mainline denominations have to deal with this now, but we have, independent churches that are not unknowingly importing in these ideas, and they don't know what it's going to. It's like the vaccine, right? We get it. We don't know what it's gonna do. We think it's gonna help us with COVID, and hopefully it does. But we don't know what's gonna happen in 3-4 years. Like, this is too soon to tell. So it's a cost benefit ratio. It's like, if I'm not gonna live that much longer, like, who cares, right? Like, if it kills me in 10 years, what if I'm like 70? It's like, dude, I don't want to die from COVID next year. So like, you gotta weigh all that stuff out. But like. But churches are importing in this ideology, even like the Gospel Coalition, and reform people are like starting to teach this stuff from the pulpit, and I don't think they've parsed this enough to be doing that yet. I don't think they know where this goes, and so I'm very concerned. Our church people, you don't have to worry. I'm anti-woke like crazy.
Yes.
Like, I won't tolerate the presence of it at all. And I'll annoy the hell my church people are annoyed of my anti-wokeness. They're more annoyed of anti-wokeness from Pastor Sam than they are actually tired of wokeness. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud. I did my job to shepherd my people. We lost some people, and it's really heartbreaking to me. But hey, it's necessary. And some people are never gonna open their churches again if they bow to this. And so I mean, I want to do another episode based on I'm how we're for Black lives as a church, and how we're for justice. And how twisted things are, even though we're considered like whatever we are.
We're labeled as like those all lives matter.
Yeah.
People and
no, dude, people will be shocked of the stuff that we teach. It's very confusing, right? Because it's like, I thought you guys were all about like this, all about that. And it's like, no, we're really, really, really in the matrix of like confusion, like. It's really bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Like, up is down, left is right. And it's just crazy time right now. And but our church people need to know this is happening everywhere. And I knew this was going to happen 5 years ago. I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to come to the whole church. Like, I knew this was going to happen to evangelicals and everywhere. I knew it was going to get into everything. And that once it does, it's like you can't stop it. And I told my leaders, so all our church people, I told our leaders this 5 years ago, and they thought I was insane and annoying. And I told them, read these books, watch these videos. This is coming to the church. And I told them. And some of them were faithful servants, and they studied it. Even though they hated it, they were like, oh, okay, because you said so, I'll read it and all these videos. Some people didn't. Some people were like, I'll read it later. It's not, why is it so crazy? And they just kind of put it off until like last year. But it's here now. And I think churches got caught with their pants down. Like, they're pooing, and then it hit, and they're getting over. They're like, "Oh crap!" and their pants are still around their ankles, and some of them still don't know what's going on. They're like teaching it. They're like recommending these books, and like, they're not prepared, and it's gonna really bite them. You know what happened? One thing that concerned me was good, legitimate pastors getting fired. By their own congregants that started buying into this kind of garbage. And you mentioned, you don't have to name them, but you mentioned that something like that happened to somebody that
Yeah.
Can you describe that?
Oh, like I won't name the area at all, but a pastor who I guess had an associate pastor who was very into this, like more. I guess they're reformed, heavily reformed, and they're really
Which is
into.
yeah,
But and then
it can happen to anybody.
yeah, the reformed. This pastor I trusted, really biblical guy, and I think he navigated it well. But one of the associate pastors really, really went into this ideology, and then pretty much said, "Why do we even have a senior pastor? Like, why we're all like people together?" And so he pretty much wanted to get rid of
Hierarchy.
the hierarchy, but then replaced himself with it, so he can get paid and get all these things, and made up all these rumors. And the pastor that planted the church made it grow like crazy, and then he stepped down because it was just so much chaos for him. And I'm just hearing that, I'm just like, oh my God, it's happening to him. But a part of me realizes, like, oh, I thought that pastor would kind of go along with that, like, extreme progressive ideas, but he didn't. And to see this process for him, although difficult, I'm like, oh, I think he's going to wake up to it now. And I think he is. So,
But he
it's-
stepped down from his his
in
church.
his church, and then his church doesn't know, but I think all the church members are like, oh, if this is what happened, they're not following this new guy or this other guy, and they're just gonna leave and follow him. So
Yeah. This is the irony of it, is that like these people always view themselves as a victim, and then they acquire power with it, and then they're basically the worst version of a leader. And it's like, this could happen to anybody. And this was already happening in universities 5 years ago, with professors being called a Nazi when they're Jewish, like things like that, right? What's his name? Brett Weinstein. He's a Jewish man, and
Weinstein.
yeah, and he's being called a fascist and a Nazi by his students, and the faculty and the leadership at Evergreen College didn't back him up. You guys should watch that. It's crazy. It's crazy. Evergreen College, Brett Weinstein. What happened to him? Like, and he was a liberal progressive. He's no longer progressive anymore, but he was a liberal progressive, and they ended up firing him. He had to step down from his position, and it's like,
That was mentioned in the coddling book.
yeah, okay, good. Brett Weinstein's story. There's so much good video about that, and this was happening in in different places around the world. And I predicted at that time that this is coming to the church. There's no way it's not going to come to every mainline denomination. And and it's going to come to the church. And it's going to come in through the justice stuff. And so I tried to make sure that I taught a biblical form of it preemptively, so that we can discern the bad one. But even then, people fell into it. And so I don't know, my conclusion after the 5 years before trying to prep our church for this stuff, if I could do anything different and go back and tell myself to prep the church, how to do anything different to prep the church, I would say just shoot from your hip right away. Like, don't try to like get people ready and get people to understand and like slowly, get them to understand what this is. Just go guns blazing and be honest, which is what I'm doing now. And I wish that I had done this 5 years ago, but I was still, UMC, and, I didn't want to offend anyone. It wasn't my, stomping grounds. I was still serving VKUMC, wanted to honor that. And because of that, I was just more like, helping people come to that conclusion. That was a mistake. If I had just been clear from the beginning, I think we could have saved a lot of drama. And that's just how I feel about it. I don't know if that's true. But I would want to do it differently. And like, for, I know that on our group chat, there's pastors that listen to this. And brother, sister in Christ, you need to be clear. And if you don't know what this is, do not show it to your congregation until you understand completely what this is. And if you do teach this to your church after you've studied it, and you do end up teaching this to your congregations, know that I probably won't ever trust you. And if you want to know why, I'm here to talk. But like, you can't sit with this, and eventually they'll eat you alive. Woke people eat. When there's no one left to eat, they eat each other, and it's like they don't care if you lose your money, your job, your livelihood. Their justice cause is so, virtuous that they are blind to any sense of morality, and that's what's dangerous about it. You have to have good boundaries with stuff like that. Can't convince people unless there's a bridge. And so the last thing I would say is, if you know people that have fallen into this ideology, destructive on every level, mental health, emotional health, every level, it will deteriorate your life into chaos. If you know somebody that's fallen into this, and you're like, I want to help them, what do I do? My response to that would be, find a bridge that you can find in common with this person and try to grow it as much as possible. But if they crap on that bridge that you found, you need to create distance and pray for that person, and because they will turn on you. It's just the way the ideology works. And so, pray for them, love them. Don't let anyone stop you from loving. But try to find a bridge of conversation, something that you could agree on, and grow from there. If you can't, if they turn on you and starts aggressing towards you, don't aggress back. Just love them, pray for them, forgive them, and then and wait, because they might wake up. They might wake up and like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on? And so I've done that. I've had successful conversation with few people where we had something in common, and that was the kind of like thing that linked it all to other stuff. But it starts with slander about you, and then that's more like airing out the pain that they've received, trauma that they've received from you. And then they slander you and with other people, and they always look for people in power to slander you to get some kind of like some kind of rectifying of the wound or whatever. And then they want to they want to make sure that you lose your position, and it's crazy. And but they, in their mind, it's like this: I'm doing the world a service. And I would never do that to them. That's how we need to be different. We'd never do that to somebody. And but that's what's going on right now in the UMC Calpac. And that's close to home. And I know a lot of people hate my guts, but like, I still love them. I didn't serve a community for 13 years and come away hating everybody. I love those people, regardless of how they feel about me. And most of them send me kind words and good wishes. But this is happening. It doesn't matter, and not just mainline. It's in mainline denomination. It has basically killed the church, wholesale, mostly. UMC, not yet. That's really powerful. But like at least 50% plus is like they're gospel driven Wesleyan people.
Yeah, there's still hope for the UMC.
Yes, there is. But they need to draw boundaries with this and divide. And I don't think that's wrong. I think God is looking for that to happen. I think that's biblical. And there's hope. But reform people and conservatives that are toying with this thing. I have some friends that are, and like I think they'll figure it out, but there'll be damage done because of it. And so, but our church people, pray, don't touch that stuff, man. And it reaches in through sensuality, like your feelings, and then it drives in the thinking. And so, undeniable feeling. How could you not feel something for this? And then they through that drive in the thinking behind it, and it's very deceptive, and it'll destroy your life. It'll it'll almost destroy you, like your mental health, your physical health. It's not good. It's not good. Anyone that touches you could see, like, there's chaos happening in their life. So
Don't touch it.
can't touch this.
I should end it with that song. Anyways, we did an hour.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
That's what's going on. What are we calling this? Woke apostasy.
WOKEianity.
No, woke apostasy.
Okay.
I like woke apostasy.
Okay.
All right. Good night.